By 1917, it was clear to everyone but Tsar Nicholas II that World War I had gone bad for Russia in every way. The small industrialization and rail network made food and military goods difficult to transport, and the lack of factories made ammunition difficult to produce at a rate that they needed to be produced. Casualties began to mount as the undersupplied Russian armies began to be pushed, with the majority of the Congress of Poland finding itself mostly under German control by May 1915. Nicholas, who had taken control of the High Command despite the opposition of his general staff, began to be blamed for the failures of the war by his subjects. The February Revolution, the reaction of a tired and angry Russian population, saw Nicholas abdicating the throne for both him and his hemophiliac son, Alexei, on March 15, 1917, ending 304 years of Romanov rule. He and his family were put under the protection of Alexander Kerensky, the new Minister of Justice under the newly established provisional government, made of the Duma, after the more radical socialist revolutionaries belonging to the Petrograd Soviet, the counter-government to the provisional government, began to call for the family's execution. Kerensky's hope was to place the family in exile, with the UK being the most probable country to send the family to, with King George V being Nicholas's first cousin. George V gleefully accepted the provisional government's plea for his country to take his favorite cousin in. However, transporting the family to safety would prove to be difficult, as all the train lines were firmly in the hands of the Petrograd Soviet, who strongly opposed the exile of the once royal family. The British Parliament, who only reluctantly accepted the Romanovs' exile, began to second-guess the decision after the Romanovs' arrival was delayed, and the Liberal Prime Minister, Lloyd George, warned George V of the dangers of accepting the autocratic family into the Liberal Britain, convincing the king that the presence could inspire British socialists to conduct their own revolution, putting his own rule at risk. In the end, the British government and king formally rescinded their invitation. Despite his best efforts, Kerensky failed to find another country who would accept the deposed royals. Upon the failed July offensive against the German and Austro-Hungarian empires, millions began to fill the streets of Petrograd on July 16, demanding the end of the war. In a panic, the provisional government blamed the recently revived Bolshevik Party, under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin, who had returned from exile in Switzerland via a German-sponsored train, leading to their banishment and imprisonment. Though Lenin managed to escape to Finland, Kerensky quickly seized control of the provisional government. Wary of his depleting influence over Russian politics, he sent the Romanov family deeper into the Russian wilderness to Tobolsk for their safety. By August 13th, the family arrived in the city, far away from the chaos that was Petrograd. It was in Tobolsk that Nicholas witnessed his empire descend into madness. Upon the failed right-wing coup, known as the Kornilov Affair, on September 10th to the 13th, the Bolsheviks were not only allowed to come back into Russian politics, but were empowered, forming the Red Guard. Sensing it was now safe to return to Petrograd, with Leon Trotsky, Lenin's trusty right-hand man, being elected as the leader of the Petrograd Soviet on September 25th, he opted to return to Russian politics himself. Arriving on October 23rd, Lenin and the other Bolshevik leaders voted 10-2 to seize control of the Russian Empire. By November 8th, after a bloodless coup called the October Revolution, the radical socialist Bolsheviks remained as the sole rulers of the Russian Empire. For now, anyway. Nicholas was horrified by the Bolshevik takeover, and for the first time, truly regretted his abdication. Most importantly, however, the safety of both Nicholas and his family would be the duty of the radical Bolsheviks, who were among those calling for their execution. A civil war quickly followed the October Revolution, with anti-Bolshevik forces forming the Right Army, composed of Republicans, monarchists, and socialists, all brought together by the opposition to the Bolshevik Revolution. As the Civil War began to engulf more and more of the empire, the Bolsheviks were slowly losing the support of the Russian people. To avoid this, the Bolsheviks needed to satisfy the greatest demand of the people, an end to the war that had killed so many fathers and sons. To accomplish this, however, the Bolsheviks were forced to sign the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk on March 3, 1918, which took over 1 million square kilometers of the empire, a third of its population, and most of its industry, giving it to the Central Powers, mostly the German Empire. Meanwhile, back at Tobolsk, the Bolsheviks sent Vasily Yakovlev to move the Romanovs out of the Siberian city on March 26, 1918, as they wanted to avoid their premature deaths in the hands of other revolutionaries before they could put them on a mock trial. The Romanovs, however, were unaware of their already decided fate. Upon the announcement that they were to move, both Nicholas and Alexandria assumed it was to force Nicholas to sign the treaty to give him more validity. To Yakovlev's disappointment, Alexei appeared to be paralyzed from a previous hemorrhage, forcing him to leave with only Nicholas, Alexandria, and his third oldest daughter, Marie, while his other 3 daughters and their servants stayed with Alexei to ensure his recovery. On April 25th, the 3 Romanovs left Tobolsk. This is where perhaps one of the most daring and shocking attempted escapes in history happened. Yakovlev was worried that the Yekaterinburg Soviet, full of Bolshevik radicals, would kill the 3 Romanovs before they arrived at their intended destination, Moscow. To ensure their safety, he decided best to go through the Omsk Soviet. What makes the detour interesting, however, was that beyond Omsk lay the clear and safe route to the Pacific. After the Yekaterinburg Soviet picked up on this detour, they immediately notified the Omsk Soviet, declaring Yakovlev a traitor to the revolution. As the train approached Omsk, it was stopped by officials, who sent the Romanovs to Yekaterinburg, while Yakovlev barely escaped punishment. A mere 6 months after the incident, he would join the Right movement against the Bolsheviks. Upon their arrival to Yekaterinburg, Nicholas, Alexandria, and Marie were met with an angry mob, and their house, the Ipatiev house, had a large fence built around it, establishing the house as an effective prison, squandering any thoughts of escape. Meanwhile, back at Tobolsk, Alexei was declared well enough to travel, by a man only known by history as Romanov. So the rest of the Romanovs and their servants were moved to Yekaterinburg to join Nicholas, Alexandria, and Marie. The Red Guards that guarded the family were soon replaced by the Cheka, the Bolshevik secret police, and Romanov was replaced with the Cheka commissioner, Yakov Yurovsky, a man of little empathy and terrifying efficiency. Yurovsky received the order on June 13th that the family was to be executed, as Omsk had fallen to the advancing Right Army. Throughout the next 3 days, he began to scout the surrounding woods around the city, looking for a place to hide the bodies and evidence. He soon discovered an abandoned mineshaft near the village of Kryptisky, near an area called the Four Brothers, named after 4 looming trees nearby, and 400 pounds of sulfuric acid as well as 150 gallons of gasoline were bought by the Ural Soviet. On the 16th, Sednev, the kitchen boy, was ordered out of the house. That night, at 10:30, the sleeping family were awakened and were told the advancing Right Army that they must evacuate the city. They were told to wait in a small semi-basement while automobiles arrived to take them away. In the basement, Nicholas requested chairs so that they could sit while they waited, which was permitted, and he and Alexandria sat while Alexei laid across the third. Along with the family, Troop, head of the foot guards, Kartinov, Alexei's doctor, Dr. Botkin, and Alexandra's parlor maid, Demidova, all gathered behind the unsuspecting family. Yevsky, along with 11 Checker agents, entered the room with revolvers in hand. Your relations have tried to save you. They have failed, and now we must shoot you, Yevsky said sternly. What? Nicholas began to proclaim, though he failed to finish before Yevsky shot him in the head with his revolver, killing the deposed Tsar instantly. The entire squad quickly joined him, shooting the rest of the family. Demidova survived the ensuing massacre, to which she was awarded with being bayoneted 30 times before she fell. Alexei groaned in pain, still holding on to his dead father, to which one of the Checker agents kicked the boy in the head, killing him, after which Yevsky shot him 2 times in the ear, just to make sure. It was then that Anastasia, the youngest daughter of the Romanovs, woke up, having just fainted, screamed in horror before she too was bayoneted. As quickly as it began, the entire family was left dead in a brutal show of a lack of humanity.
Спи, младенец мой прекрасный, баюшки, баю. Тихо смотрит месяц ясный в колыбель твою. Стану сказывать я сказки, песенку спою.